Thank you. Hello, my name's John Condi, and I'm going to be speaking about data and insights that we gleaned from analytics across all of the Silverchair platform sites. So what we're going to do today, an overview, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'll give you background on the analysis. We'll spend the majority of the time reviewing the data that we use to test 4 different hypotheses. We'll review real-world takeaways, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions. But please feel free to ask questions at any point. So you may be wondering, who is this guy? I don't remember him from strategies last year. And you're right, I'm new to Silverchair. I'm John, and I'm a product delivery manager. A quick summary of my background. I spent 8 years in DC doing financial services research and benchmarking in both researcher and management positions. Then I completed a global MBA program. I worked at an e-learning company for 2 years. And I joined Silverchair as a product delivery manager back in April. And I live and work in Charlottesville. So I was excited to research and speak about this topic because I'm really interested in how users interact with technology and how those trends have been changing over time. And I mean this both at a professional level, because this has been a growing part of my career, and on a personal level. I ran a tech blog for a few years, and I just love keeping up on the newest tech. So based on that experience, combined with what I was hearing directly from the Silverchair clients, I started to develop these guesses about where we are as it relates to our analytics and those user behaviors and where we're really heading. So when I learned that the folks at Silverchair could give me access to this data to test the hypotheses, I said, sure, yeah, let's do this. So I was excited. I came home from work one day. I told my wife, I'm like, I have these guesses. I have this real data. I'm just going to have fun with this, and it's going to be great. She said, that sounds like nerd stuff. I'm like, it kind of is, but yeah, I'll have fun with it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Before we jump into the data, a little bit of level setting. So the data we'll be reviewing is based on Google Analytics from all of the platform sites. I'll let you know that some of the data was pulled individually from each site and then aggregated. Other data was aggregated using a universal tag that pulls all of the data across all the platform sites. So this is a roll-up view that we use, and it excludes internal Silverchair traffic, and it excludes bots and spiders. Almost all of the data here is presented in the aggregate view, and no data is attributed to specific institutions. I was the primary researcher for this, unless everyone hates what I have to say. In that case, Jake was the primary researcher for this project. And we're sharing this info with the attendees. So if you see a particular graph or data point that jumps out at you, feel free to take a note or take a picture, but just know that we'll be sharing this with you afterwards. And kind of my disclaimer, the data we use, as I said, is just from Google Analytics, and it's meant to highlight high-level trends. So it doesn't include anything related to counter reports or article counts, Google Analytics. So this was over 2 months ago. We started developing these hypotheses before we pulled and analyzed the data. So number 1 and number 2 are related to each other, and number 3 and 4 are also related to one another. So first we'll look at mobile usage over time. Has mobile usage increased, and if so, to what extent? Another relating to mobile, within 5 years, would the majority of our platform traffic be coming from mobile devices? Yes or no? Then 3 and 4, we'll look at how we're acquiring traffic, especially from Google. And we'll see if the majority of site traffic comes from Google. We'll also compare Google and Google Scholar. So let's get to it. Hypothesis number 1. Mobile usage has steadily increased over time. So as I think back 10 years ago to 2007, smartphones really began to take off. It's hard to believe this was a decade ago, and I was a researcher running around DC, and I was really interested in these advances and what it meant for the future in our day-to-day relationship with technology. If you were following futurists and tech writers at that time, many of them said that mobile usage, it had increased so much that it would just kill off PCs. So some of the quotes, and I look back at some articles I saved, and I paraphrase some of them here. These are common themes. The PC is dead. In the near future, we'll be focusing all of our energy on the mobile user experience. Another one, with the increases in processing power in mobile devices, consumers will soon be using one universal device with one operating system for all of their daily computing needs. This will eliminate the need for a desktop or laptop computer. So let's look at the data. Has mobile usage increased over time? Yes, of course it has. The farthest I could reliably go back with our data was 2013. So we pulled user data from all the sites in 2013 and compared that to 2017, year to date. So mobile usage made up 7% of site usage in 2013 and 17% in 2017. So on average, we're seeing a 2.4% increase a year. And then when you look at this individually, you put like 14, 15, 16 in there, it's about 2 to 3% each year. There are no big jumps or dips. As a side note, tablet usage, it actually decreased slightly. It was 6.3% back in 2013. It's 4.8% now. And I was just curious, when we say tablets, does that effectively mean iPads? It does. It's over 70%, and the rest of tablet usage is pretty much Android. So, hypothesis number one, we can confidently say that the data supports the hypothesis. We're seeing an increase in mobile usage, and it's been pretty steady over the past 4 years. So hypothesis two still deals with mobile usage, but I'd say it's bolder. It gets into those futurist predictions and those game-changing behaviors. It's with the rise in mobile usage, desktop usage will no longer comprise the majority of platform traffic within the next 5 years. So in other words, desktop usage will dip below 50% within 5 years. Let's see. So in hypothesis one, we had historical data, and here's a projection. So if I took that same 2.4% increase and then saw what it looks like in 5 years, and then we'll assume tablet usage is flat across there, where does that get us? In 2021, would mobile usage overtake desktops and laptops? No. So mobile usage wouldn't even be close to the majority at that point. So we could stop there, because that's what we were asking. But at this point, I got kind of curious. I wanted to know, how many bars do we need? So how far would we need to stretch this slide to see when we get to the majority of usage being mobile? The answer is, we have it to the date, October 16th, 2029. So that's 12 years from now. So if you're working on that date, on October 16th, 2029, we can all celebrate a few things. One, it's World Anesthesia Day. That's a celebration of anesthesia professionals and the first successful surgery using anesthesia in 1846. Shout out to ASA on that one. It's also the birthdays of John Mayer and Angela Lansbury. And if this trend continues exactly the way it should, desktop users will no longer be the majority of users on Silverchair websites. So that was the data, but so what? What does that mean? What's the broader story? And if this is what's going on, what should we do? First, it's that laptops and desktops aren't going away. There are even slight increases in PC sales in the US in 2017 compared to 2016. So yeah, I mean, those predictions of the PC's death and having one universal device, I would say they were greatly exaggerated. So what are our users doing? This graph is not based on Silverchair platform data. This is from Microsoft, and it's search usage by device on Bing during a typical workday. It didn't say if this was specific to a particular geography, but I definitely think it's relevant for people who work 5-day work weeks in the US and in Europe. In the first section, people are mostly asleep. So this is midnight to 7 a.m. Then from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., we begin working and desktop usage takes off. Desktop is the pink here. Desktop usage continues to lead throughout the workday until about 5 p.m. Then mobile devices and tablets, they dominate in the evening. So I like this for a few reasons. First is, this is from January 2017. According to 10 years ago, this pink line was not supposed to be here, but it is, and it's not going away for us anytime soon. Another reason I like it is because I spot checked several of our individual client sites at different times in the day to see if this applied to our Silverchair platform users, and the answer was yes. So this matches what we're seeing at a high level. Can I definitively say that every site on the platform follows this usage pattern? No, I can't. But I do think it could be a worthwhile exercise to look into whether or not your users fit this pattern. And if not, how would you map it differently? If you have that, I feel like you could use that for decision-making purposes, marketing purposes, part of an engagement plan. And then we saw examples of personas. I know a lot of you have user personas. If you could match this to your user personas and figure out more of what their typical usage looks like, I feel that's a powerful tool to have. So back to hypothesis number 2. With the rise in mobile usage, desktop usage will no longer comprise the majority of platform traffic in the next few years? No, the data did not support that hypothesis. All right, we finished reviewing mobile, and we're going to move on to acquisition and to Google. So hypothesis 3, the majority of site traffic comes from Google and Google Scholar searches. Before we go into the data, I would like to do a show of hands poll. So if we compare Big Google, Google.com, and Google Scholar, I'm going to reveal a spoiler here. We acquire more users from the platform sites from Big Google than we do from Google Scholar. How much more, though? So that's the question for you guys. For all platform traffic in 2017, year to date, how many people think we generate twice as much traffic from Big Google as we do from Google Scholar? Okay. Does anyone think we generate 5 times as much traffic? 10 times? Last one, 15 times as much traffic or more? Okay. Let's look into this, and I promise within a few slides I'm going to reveal the answer to that. So here's our acquisition by channel for year-to-date 2017. 48% is the largest slice of the pie, and that's from organic search. 90% of that organic search is from Google. Second is referrals. And this wasn't immediately intuitive to me, but Google Scholar is actually part of referrals. That's just how Google defines it. The third is through a direct link or a bookmark, and then we have 1% through social media. So 38% of total traffic comes from Google Search, Big Google, and 5.5% comes from Google Scholar. So that's a combined 43.5%. A side note, little food for thought here. I saw that social was 1%, and I've had some conversations last night and today about why people think that is, and I'd be interested if we looked at any of the individual site traffics, as if anyone's gathering, say, 5%, 10% from social media, and to learn more about what they're doing. Interested to get thoughts, too, on if we think people are just looking for very specific things when they're looking for our type of content, so social media, it's to gather kind of a wider net, so it's just kind of how it's going to be. But if someone's doing something interesting with social media, let me know. A side note on bots and spiders. So you may be wondering more about the non-human activities and whether or not they're involved. So they were filtered out. And to give you an example, and this is repeated on themes from earlier today, during a 1-week period, we took a look at one platform site. During that time, there were 32 million raw requests. Our DevOps team looked at that. They contacted the folks who manage the server, and there were 231,000 sessions from 172,000 users. So the difference is 32 million versus 231,000 that we're getting from Google Analytics. So huge difference here. So what does that mean? As we said, there's a whole lot of non-human traffic that crawl the platform sites. This is the non-malicious traffic, not the malicious traffic that Stuart was talking about. I'm saying this traffic itself isn't an immediate cause for concern for us because Google bot traffic is automatically filtered out from Google Analytics. And while the level of traffic is high, it hasn't negatively impacted our site performance. So we have a combined 43.5% of traffic coming from Big Google and Google Scholar. So that's not a majority if you define it as 50% or above, but it is a majority if you consider it as the greatest quantity or share. So there isn't a slice that would be bigger than this, and that's why I'm saying that the data mostly supports the hypothesis. Okay, last hypothesis, and it's related to number 3. This is what we guessed with the show of hands. The same amount of traffic is generated through Google Scholar as it is through Big Google, and Google Scholar traffic is higher quality traffic. First, let's look at the raw numbers. So year-to-date 2017, 16 million sessions were initiated through Big Google, and 1 million sessions were initiated through Google Scholar. So for the people who guessed 15 times as much traffic was generated through Big Google, you were correct. Now we'll look more at the differences between the two. So new sessions is Google's estimate of first-time visitors. 71% are from Google, 61% are from Google Scholar. So Google's a little bit higher, but not by a significant factor. Here's engagement. So are users more engaged when they come in through Google Scholar than they are from Big Google? Now this is just from an analytics perspective. Strictly analytics, the answer is no, and I can explain why. So the bounce rate is higher on Google Scholar. You don't want a higher bounce rate. I know most of you are probably already familiar with that, but bounce rate is you come in, you don't engage with anything, you bounce. If your bounce rate is high, that's not great. On average, people who enter the site through Google, they view more pages, and they stay on the site for a longer amount of time. Another food for thought point here. Again, the scope of this was only Google Analytics. But in a future analysis, I think it'd be interesting to pair this with some non-Google Analytics data. For example, if a user accessed the site from Google Scholar, are they more likely to view an article or make a purchase? So our last hypothesis, the same amount of traffic is generated through Google Scholar as it is through Big Google, and Google Scholar traffic is higher quality. The data did not support this hypothesis. Okay, some real-world takeaways. So I've listed 3 here, and I have a potential 4th that I encourage for future thought and projects, and that may involve Silverchair or may not. So first, I'd say is to engage with users based on their preferences, and we saw this in some of the presentations earlier, but this really involves the chart that maps the users to activity throughout the day. For example, if you have a user, are they going to behave the same way when listening to a podcast as they are making a purchase? And would they be using the same type of device for those type of activities? What type of day would they be completing those activities? If you're sending an alert at a particular time of day, does that influence how the user will consume that information? By setting that stuff up and combining the user personas, I think you can get more precise about how you approach those types of things and monitor the results better. Second is just monitoring Google Scholar trends. I know it's very important. I know a lot of the Google Scholar decisions and rules drive what's going on with Big Google, but I do think it's also important to look at the data and how much traffic is actually coming in from Google Scholar. I think that should be at least partially part of the decision-making process when making business decisions. Third is because we're getting the traffic, SEO matters, and Silverchair does a lot to optimize SEO, but make sure you're optimizing SEO. And then a potential fourth, if anyone's generating significant traffic through social media, let me know, because on average it's a small percentage. Thank you for your attention. That's all I have to say for the day, and I'll take some questions.
See some questions coming up. There's
Yeah, you come up too, Jake.
page 2 over here, yes, and some here in the front.
Thanks, Jen. I was just curious where a lot of the industry ANI systems fit into that picture, like PubMed, Crossref, and so
I'll
forth.
give that one to you.
Sure. So, Michael, those will officially show up in referrals. They won't count as. That's right. They won't count as organic search. So, if I don't know if you can shoot us back to that the traffic slice in there. Can we get that presentation up again, just so we can go back? Are you hitting the back button?
Yeah, the presentation isn't up. Oh, there we go.
Keep going back. There we go. Oh, yep.
Yep.
So it's in that referral number, and you're saying that we're seeing 29% total coming in referral, but 19% of that is coming from Google Scholar. Sorry, is that 19% of the 29%?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so that means that there is still a whole other 20% or 24% in there that's coming from other referrers.
There's 81%.
Yeah. Well, we don't have the data in front of us, but a lot of that referral, Michael, is also from your own society sites and some of your other publications. So it's even small. I'm sorry. I'm making it even more depressing for all of the rest of those discovery portals. But no, they are a vanishingly or a surprisingly small amount of the traffic coming from those systems that were the 87 systems we're making downstream deposits into are very much dwarfed by Google Scholar. I think there's more questions over there. John asked me to answer these questions with him, by the way, so I'm not just like, bogarting his presentation.
This is true.
There's a bunch. There's Todd over there.
Regarding the stickiness of Google Scholar users versus Google general users, it might be, and I don't know how you'd tease this data out, that Google Scholar users are better at querying or find the information that they're looking for and therefore get to the page that they want and then move on, rather than a general user who goes to a site, finds something, it's not exactly what they're looking for, and then browse further to see what they could find.
I agree
and
that
therefore spend more time on the site.
I agree that this is possible given what the data said, and I tried to caveat that slide saying from an analytics engagement perspective, definition-wise, it says that Google users are more engaged, but that might not be the most relevant definition for what we're looking at in terms of engagement. So I would do broader analysis on that. So what you're suggesting could very well be true.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you have search result, a search system that people keep searching isn't as good a search system as one that gets the user what they want.
You mean it's not called the 25-minute clinical consult? Right. Higher engagement.
Different is how you segment your content. So people who are coming into educational content or content for residents will spend significantly more time and more pages than researchers. And Google Scholar will skew researchers. So if you segmented it by your different kind of journals and your different kind of content, I think you'd see different patterns. At least that's what we see.
Right, and certainly on the reference sites that we run for McGraw-Hill and Walters Clore, we see much higher pages per session than the researchers. The use model is definitely much more time on site for those. Please.
Oh, sorry.
The reason your social might be low, and I can only really speak from our experience at Oxford, is if you're using a lot of content marketing and you're using a lot of blog content, which is the way social's going, that's direct, not social. So,
Okay, so you're saying the social will take them to the blog, which will then get turned as a direct referral, and the social will be kind of washed out
or
of
into
that.
some other kind of marketing
Okay.
CMS or something different, yeah.
Good. We should look at that, yeah. Sorry, there's lots of hands up. We actually just did this session just to get information from you all. It was a bit of a bait and switch, so please tell us.
I was just going to comment on the social as well, and the mobile being, so Java Networks traffic, we've been very, very proactive about e-marketing. And since we've started doing that, mobile usage goes up in correlation to e-talk usage and social. And we track our social very specifically so it doesn't get merged into direct. And social has a direct correlator to mobile. And generally speaking, our journals are around 30 to 40% mobile now. And when we've launched the last 2 journals, there's an interesting trend we see before institutional usage takes off year 2, and before there's a lot of content that's indexed in Google year 2, because you're kind of building those pages year 1. Mobile's around 60% for both of the new journals, and then after year 2, it goes down to 40 to 50. And that has been the pattern, and I think it has to do with being directly working every day, driving users to specific content in various channels. And as our social growth grows, it's almost exponential how much goes mobile versus desktop. Our overall traffic has grown 20% over the last two years in a row, so we're not losing anything to mobile. Our desktop usage is still strong, but we're growing sort of like you would see a P&L grow in a business where you're trying to differentiate your lines of revenue.
Great. That's
Thank
good.
you for
That's good
sharing.
intel. I wasn't really buying the projection of 2.5% out into the future, but I understand that's the only thing you could do with that amount of data. But this is the type of insight that we're looking for about why the data needs interpretation. I saw more hands. There's more hands. There's hands all over the place.
I had just heard that the Google Scholar traffic is very hard to calculate because of the subscriber links, that if you click a subscriber link, it'll show up as coming through the university rather than as a Google Scholar referral. Is that true? Do you know?
I did not see that when I looked.
That shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be the case.
I could drill down on the referrals within analytics and see how much was coming from Scholar, and I think it had different countries listed, and we added them together.
But Matt, I don't think the subscriber links as a service, I don't think they're routing through the university. They're just simply, the subscriber links knows from files that we put up on the server that this institution will have direct access to it. And so they're able to say, you have full text access to this. But I believe the referral mechanism itself is just a straight referral into the article. I don't think it routes through the institutional server. Wes is giving me a thumbs up on that one, so. Allison?
So when talking about quality of traffic, one measure would be a counter hit. So is there any way, and especially a PDF download or a full text page view,
Right.
any thoughts about how you might tie the generated, the referral traffic from Google Scholar or versus Big Google to that kind of hit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. It wasn't in the scope of John's, remember when he said everything that could be wrong with this, just blame me? So,
Right, I
that's
know
one of
this
the things I
doesn't measure
suggest
that,
for-
but
for
just
future
wondering what a
analysis.
next step might be.
Definitely. I definitely, that's something we could do, and we should look at that going forward.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward too. We could get the quality of your acquisition more easily kind of we could, you can define a whole certain set of behaviors. And I know that some of you do this, by the way, in Google. You have goals and you have campaigns and you can set them up. They don't have to be involving advertising, by the way. So Google will let you set up campaigns and goals in your application that don't have you making a big Google ad buy. But you could set up I want to see traffic sources and I want to see if they do these 3 or 4 different activities. And some of them can be, having full text article pages or downloading PDFs. And we can help you set those up as well. Although some of you have folks who are setting up. Paul, I know you have I think maybe hundreds of goals set up in your Google Analytics around certain behaviors you guys are looking at. Another question over here, Daniel?
Yeah. First, a suggestion maybe for the future is I like to put a filter on it that says only look at certain traffic that have university or institute or academy in their name, and that gives me a good sense of really tracking the researchers when I want to do that, and that's a good way to sort of filter out all the searches that we get with sex or porn in the query, which we have a lot of. The other question I have is ad blocking is increasing as time goes up, and so often they may filter out scripts to load Google Analytics, and I'm wondering if you or other people around the room have strategies for supplementing analytics data that might be lost from ad blocking software.
I don't know if we're seeing a lot of blocking of some of the core analytics JavaScript. I know a lot of these systems will block, and Stuart, you might be able to help me out on this, will block cross-domain cookies, like especially the ones that are depositing information into a cookie that is kind of cross-domain, an ad cookie that is following you around the internet. But most of the Google Scholar code is not cross-domain. It's literally a JavaScript that's making a deposit. But Stuart, maybe you could help out with that. Are we seeing?
Well, for our core analytics, the majority of that is logged server-side, so there's no impact. It certainly has the potential to block out Google Analytics. I'm not aware, I haven't looked into it myself in terms of what percentage of that is getting blocked, but we could certainly do some work to correlate that back.
Okay, well, it would be something for us to look into then. And yes, we can definitely filter down the traffic. You're right that there are just some, there's some low quality traffic out there when you're live to the web. I don't know what you're publishing over there, but
I'll show you later.
All right, is that it?
Other questions? Yes, Mark?
Back to the social media aspect.
Hold on, Mark, can you wait for the mic?
Back to the social media issue again. Did you happen to run time on site or bounce rate for social media in addition to Google or Google Scholar? Or did you just focus on those two?
I did not. No,
Okay.
we could look at that, but no, we didn't look at it.
So I think we use social media a little differently maybe than most sites because we have assignments, because we have weekly curriculum topics that we use social media to ping people for Facebook, things like that to get them. So I suspect that our social media percentage is higher, but I'm just wondering if that's a more quality link than other acquisition types.
That's a good suggestion.
I mean, I think
Look
it's
at
a
that
pretty
too.
reasonable hypothesis to think that if someone's coming through you via a social media channel, if they're subscribing to your social media feeds, then they're probably a pretty engaged user. But we would need to see that in the data.
True,
Yeah.
but again,
Yeah.
Google Scholar showed a somewhat inverse approach to that. So maybe it's a quality link and they get what they need and go. So I don't know, just kind of
Right.
curious to look at the numbers.
That'd be something to look into. Yeah.
We're taking notes on these suggestions too, so. we'll
In our
follow them.
heads.
No, Stephanie is.
All right, folks, great. You've all survived the after lunch sessions. I know that, sometimes it's hard to get the energy up, but what I'd like you all to go do now is go guzzle some coffee and let's take a break. And first of all, let's thank John for putting this together.
Thank you.